welcome my esteemed colleague, Phil Chang. I was so looking forward to this, Phil. I
I,
think we're gonna
I
have fun.
I was looking forward to this. I've been thinking about this all week, so I'm looking forward to this too. I don't know about the esteem part, but I'm happy to be here. I think you and I are going to have some fun on this. So
Absolutely. If we have enough fun or not enough fun, we'll go on to do another one. Please.
that sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
You've done sales marketing and you've done all kinds of different things. Can you walk us through your career and
Yeah.
then tell us why CPG? How did you get into packaged goods and retail, please?
Gosh. Okay. I'm gonna try and keep this super tight because I am old and I've done a whole bunch of things. So if I kind of like if I hit the beginning really quick is I have a degree from U of T. It's a double major English and political science with a minor in creative writing and philosophy. I started at Bank of Montreal as a part-timer, customer service, Bank of Montreal credit card at a call center. And then my first real full-time job was with RBC Insurance when they were brand new. So I think I was like in their first 20 hires
Wow.
for customer service reps. It was very slow pace, especially as a young guy. I wanted to move, and it didn't really work for me.
Was it commission based?
No, it wasn't actually. It was a salary because I was on the customer service side. So all the inbound traffic was from branches that were getting RBC insurance, and we would talk to clients about what their insurance really means, when they made claims, all that kind of stuff. We would help them with that stuff. So very early days on RBC insurance. I think they've come a long way now. They're kind of a different animal than when we were there. The first 2 years into that, I realized I don't love this. I don't want to do this. It was difficult to do the same thing over and over and over again. I took a contract job, customer service with Lipton at the time. And so I took the job, started working with Lipton and I worked like instant change, right? Because I started working with customers. So London Drugs, East West, right? Loblaws West, like people, kind of, grocers at the receiving end and things like that. And then Lipton became Unilever. That was right at the time of the transition. So it became Unilever. So I worked for Unilever and I did inside sales. So they had a success rep at the time that took orders and also settled accounts, accounts receivables. I took that job, did that for a couple of years, thought I really like this and I really love the numbers part of what we do. And so I got an opportunity to go to Revlon, and then Revlon was looking for an analyst at the time. So I went to Revlon and became an analyst there, and I did analytic work, like sales analytic work, all that stuff. Taught myself Microsoft databases like Access. I knew very, English and political science, didn't know anything about Excel, taught myself Excel, started building models, things like that. Worked with kind of ginormous guys like Shoppers Drug Mart on the Revlon side of things. Really got to love data, just love kind of pulling stories and things like that. The reason that you'll hear all these steps in my life is because I learn and then I learn quickly. But what I didn't learn early in my life was how to talk to organizations to help me move within organizations. I always thought that the best move was to go somewhere else. And then Revlon, I went from Revlon to Kimberly-Clark. And Kimberly-Clark, I was a category captain there. I worked on the Walmart business. I helped them, category captaincy it's tried and true and old now, but at the time it was new. And so it was a really weird thing, right? Like Walmart would bring you in, you would be paid by Kimberly-Clark, but you were a Walmart resource. We started to do all this stuff. And then from there, I moved from Walmart to Danone. Danone was looking for someone on the sales side of things. So I was key account on the Walmart business. And then I'm going to fast forward a little. Danone, I went to Pfizer. And then Pfizer, I was category management there. And then category management. And then Pfizer got bought by Johnson& Johnson. The biggest stretch in my life was Johnson& Johnson. I did sales strategy. I did it on the allergy business. I did it on the feminine hygiene business. And then I did it on the beauty business. And sales strategy is like this crazy role because I sit right in between sales and marketing. Marketing hates you because they always think that you're getting in their way. And the sales guys always think that you're the rep for marketing. So they would bring you, like, I want to put this on sale. And you go, that's craziness. How do I balance a marketing initiative to drive consumers against the need for sales to, sell things, but in a sustainable manner? Right. And it's not for everybody. Like lots of people don't like this role. I love this role. It was my thing. Like I love this role. So at the time, Johnson & Johnson had a beauty section. They had a consumer care section. And they had an over-the-counter business. I managed to do it on all three, which I really loved. Is if today I'm at, this level as a salesperson, tomorrow they would love me to be a marketer, also on the same level, right? And then maybe an analyst also on the same level. So for you, that's 6 years of your life going sideways, right? If you think of like a career pyramid, and companies are very good at that. When I got to Johnson& Johnson, I realized I actually like this company and I like what we do. So I don't want to leave to do, to do what I was doing. So how do I do this? But I don't want to keep moving this way. Like sometimes it's okay, I'll do this, but the next one has to be this, right? Like it has to be like this, right? And so I learned to kind of like talk to the company about that. So that was probably, and then the last role I did at Johnson & Johnson was a global retail role. So I got to kind of travel the world and help companies and brands all across the world, which was super fun. Lots of traveling, lots of, kind of crazy things. But at the same time, I was having children. I had one, then two, I had three kids in total. And so somewhere in this craziness of traveling, I realized I need to come home or my wife is gonna, she's gonna murder me, right? So I got to come home and be there and be a dad, right? So I left Johnson & Johnson, went to Target. Target was opening here in Canada, so that was brand new. We hadn't had a retailer open here in like a million years, right? And so I went to join them. I was the buyer on over-the-counter drugs, so I got to do the buyer role for real, and I loved it. It was fun. Like, so if you don't know what a buyer is the person on the retail side that basically decides what's on shelf. So when you walk into a store and you see all those products on shelf, there's a buyer, a person who basically goes out and figures out what boxes should you, the consumer, see on those shelves. That was really fun. And then a couple of years into that, I kind of realized that what Target wanted wasn't what I wasn't what I wanted. So I moved to the retail tech side of things. So I went to retail startups. I worked for a company called Hub Original Six. So my first experience in a little company. So I went from like this ginormous company, had to wear formal suits and everything, down to like a kitchen table with five other individuals, just kind of working, grinding away. So very remarkably different experience. I did the Hubba thing for 4 years. We raised 65 million dollars in retail
Really?
startup money, and it was very fun. Learned a ton about, kind of like targeted SEO, targeted, consumer messaging, retailer messaging, being an ambassador. For a couple of those years, I was a retail ambassador. So I got out to travel, do talks, spend time with people, kind of explaining what we do as Hubba. So I was really grateful for that experience. I really loved it. And it was my first kind of dip into a podcast world. So we did probably 30 episodes, of different podcasts, right? So I got to learn a lot about podcasting even back then. So I did that. I managed to meet Amy. Amy brought me on to teach omnichannel retail at Centennial. So I've been doing that since 2017. I think I've been teaching omnichannel retail. So that's kind of cool. And so that's when I started to like, my life started to take on a totally different path, right? As I was teaching this one course, I was doing, I'd taken on a job at a startup called Nimi, which is a biotech company. So I was doing their marketing. I was running all of their marketing. And then when Nimi got acquired, a lot of the staff got let go, right? So I went out and started freelancing. And so I've been a fractional chief marketing officer ever since. I go out, I talk to companies, I work with three companies at a time. I help guide their marketing processes. Sometimes I help them right size their marketing. And then, so that's one of my jobs. The other one is I teach, right? So I teach omnichannel retail. Sometimes I teach SEO. Edmund and I are both teaching 7.5. I'll teach intro to digital marketing. I've been podcasting since 2017. So 65 episodes.
If you
Yeah.
don't mind, can you introduce your?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the YouTube channel. There is a audio podcast. It's called This Commerce Life. You can find us everywhere. The old guy in the Batman shirt up above is my co-host. His name's Kenny. And Kenny is a retail guy as well. He's been in the industry like 30 years. So he was a buyer at London Drugs for a very long time. London Drugs, if you don't know, is a retailer out west, and they have like 90 stores. They've been around forever. They're pretty amazing. So the podcast is all about like retail, right? So we look at small, medium retail. We love these guys. We love all the businesses and kind of what the retail world looks like in Canada. We believe we've got some amazing brands that do amazing things. The YouTube channel is about 2.5 years old. And on here, we've got a whole bunch of, if you go to playlists for a second, what we try and do on this channel is a little bit different. So you'll see there's a list called Learning Retail. So if you're curious about learning retail, if you hit view full playlist, that one, you'll see we talk about some trends. We'll talk about annual planning, which is a strategic thing you got to do. We talk about the 4 Ps. We talk about buyers and what buyers feel like. We talk about pricing and promotions, how to do content calendars. So we're very much trying to think about what a small, medium business might think about day to day when it comes to running a business and the things that you might be worried about. So this one we did a year ago about how retail slowdowns were going to happen. One of the things that we were really concerned about a year ago was how many brands were trying to expand, given that economically the country was ready to slow down. And so, we did some cautioning with some brands to say, maybe now is not a good time to expand. Now is a good time to consolidate and just make sure that you're very deep into the places you are so that when slowdowns happen, you have a good economic route financial route to be able to ride out the slowdown. We're very much into one, driving recognition to small, medium businesses and what they can do for us, for the country, and for us. And then two is we want to be able to teach. Like, so probably one of the most rewarding comments that we ever get on the podcast on YouTube channel is people who say, we're so glad we caught your videos because it saved us a ton of cash, for example.
I can relate to that. Just for the brief introduction, I can see a lot of value, and even for the students and whoever career wants to get into retail or CPG.
One of the things for school, sorry to cut you off, one of the things for school that the podcast has been really useful for, if you've got students listening, whenever you're asked to do a marketing project or something, I always encourage students to find independent, small, medium Canadian businesses to do their marketing. Because anytime that you pick a Lululemon or a Aritzia or Canada Post, they kind of have all the answers. So it makes a marketing project easy, but not very learnable, right? Because the answers seem very obvious, right? But if you look at the 360 episodes that we have, what you'll realize is the marketing answers are anything but obvious, right? Is that everyone is always going, what do I do next, right? Because they think their configuration looks different from everybody else's, or they can't see the bigger picture when they're in the weeds, right? So either way, picking little businesses gives you chaos. It allows you to, so.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
The reason also is they go to a successful retailer or CPG company and they look at it and the answers are all there and they do the cut and paste.
That's right.
And they're not
But you learn nothing. Yeah, you learn nothing from. Yeah.
So the next question is, you've done both sales and marketing. I think you and I are very similar, just in different.
Yeah.
I think I
totally.
did. Yeah. So you did sales first and then marketing, I did the reverse.
Yep.
If you were to choose now, would you choose the same path, and whether sales is more fun or marketing is more fun?
I'm going to break the answer because I actually think that the funnest role I've ever had is sales strategy or trade marketing, which is right in between the two roles. Because I am one of those guys where I don't mind having those angles, but what I really love is having the general manager's hat on, which in trade marketing or sales strategy, you do a lot of. I like that role because I like being able to push and pull the business and kind of like manage it in a way that makes sense.
Now, is that role readily available, or is it a special role? Are people hiring for that role?
People hire for that role. Yeah. So I think I think most of the students I know want to go medium to large companies. That's where they want to be most of the time. I think one, because of all the other things, PR and everything else, they need job descriptions properly. So in medium to large size companies, trade marketing or sales strat is definitely a role. It's definitely available. If it wasn't available, I would choose marketing over sales almost every day.
Next question. I think some of the students are really dying for the answer. How can someone get into digital marketing?
You have to do the job. And everyone says the same thing. Everyone says, well, how do I do the job if nobody will get me the job? You have to put your money where your mouth is, right? So I think this is where students kind of get a little bit jammed up, right? Is they're all, whether you know it or not, they're all connected. So the comment that Edmund and I made earlier about don't pick the easy way out. So don't pick a Lululemon, don't pick an Aritzia, don't pick one of these big guys that have all the answers to do your examples against. Pick something hard. Make it hard on yourself, right? So pick, because here's the thing with digital marketing, everybody needs it. So the local restaurant near you, the guy who's selling at the farmer's market, the little cart at Scarborough Town Center or Square One on the weekends, everybody needs digital marketing. They just don't know, and they don't know how they need it. And the difficult thing about marketing is everybody needs it in a slightly different format. And so if you're not skilled, you can't recognize what they need or how to build it for them. So the only way to do this is to, one, put your money where your mouth is. Every project that you do where you're allowed to choose, you should choose something difficult because it'll teach you something new that allows you to be practical about what you want. And then you've got profs like us that we can help you with that, right? Two is, I would say everybody should volunteer to do something for one of your local stores. Right? So I always use the example down the street from me is a little pet store. She's 1,200 square feet. During the pandemic, based on the rules, she was allowed to have one consumer in the store at a time, right? Because of the square footage, all those kind of crazy rules in the beginning. That lady, she runs that store by herself, right? And she's been profitable. She's been there 20 years. She knows nothing about digital marketing, right? And when I asked her about email marketing, she said, Yeah, but somebody's going to do it. Who's that going to be? Me? Like, I already run the store every day. I'm tracking inventory. I'm tracking sales. I remember every customer by face and by name. I remember their dogs. I remember their cats. And you want me to go and do what? Social media, email marketing, how do I like this Google thing? I got to put myself on a map. I got to do all these things. These stores could use your help. So if you went in and said, listen, I'm volunteering, I want to help you. I'm not going to spend crazy time. Maybe I spend 3, 4 hours a week, working on your stuff. And then I'm a student, right? So if you can't, the thing you want from these guys is if you can't pay me, I want a recommendation from you. So when I'm done and you're happy with what I've done, give me a reco. You can write it down on a scrap piece of paper. I'll post it on LinkedIn so people see it. Doesn't matter, right? Like, but those skills, what students don't realize is those skills translate into vocabulary that marketers like Edmund and I will understand. So if you've worked on businesses, we know it, not because we have, special powers or anything. Well, we do. We both have special powers, but but in this case, it's because you talk the talk and you walk the walk, right? And we recognize those things. Like marketers recognize other marketers, salespeople recognize other salespeople because we talk a certain way, we do things a certain way, we think,
In 2 seconds.
Yeah.
In two
Yeah.
seconds. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's brilliant. Way back when we were kids, I would not recommend, even in our prime, my prime, sorry, you are at your prime. Even in my prime, I would not recommend volunteering, but I've been saying this, volunteering even at the booth for profit-making organization when there's
That's
a
right.
conference.
That's right.
The conference organizer would be profit-making,
Yeah.
right? But let's say a banker's conference, you meeting with the vice president of marketing of a bank, you know that because you're passing out the pass.
Yeah.
How difficult is that to link in
Yeah.
with Phil? Phil,
Yeah.
nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I linked in with you?
Yeah.
They're not going to say no because you're right there. You're part of the association.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's what they have to do
Yeah.
to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
And that was just brilliant. The next question. There are different roles in digital marketing. What are the most promising roles?
Oh gosh, that changes every day, right? Like, so the one that yields you the most learning is like a marketing coordinator, which is the first role that you're probably going to get in an org, right? Is the marketing coordinator role, because you get to see how marketers work in real time and you get to learn what because marketers, we're funny people too. Like if you put Edmund and I side by side, we would approach marketing different. There's just no, it doesn't matter. Like, even if Edmund and I came out of the same school, we went to the same training, we went to the same company, we would still do it different because, there aren't, while there are definitive answers for the audiences that you want, how you approach them, how you tackle them will be a little bit different, right? Both of us would lean on different tools, all those sorts of things. So as a marketing coordinator, you get a chance to be able to see how people work and how they function, how they manage. There are skills that you won't realize that you need, that you have to have. Project management is a key core skill. Mapping out deadlines on paper is really big, but also keeping them in your head, right? So you might wake up one day and go, it's Tuesday. I know what I got to get this thing done, right? The tea business that I run, there's a trade show or there's a consumer show this weekend, right? And so we have I had to map out a month-long timeline, that started a month ago of things I needed to get done so that the team is ready for the show. And this one's in Vancouver, so I'm not going to be there, right? So it's even more anxious because I'm here, they're there, but I've had to spend a month getting all of their stuff ready and then making sure they're paying attention so that, they're ready for the show, right? So I think marketing coordinator is a really big role. I think for the moment, if you're into Google Analytics, analytics is a big part right now because most people don't understand G4A, the new kind of Google standards. Most people don't understand, if you're in the analytics world, if you don't understand attribution, for example, and Google tags, that is something that if you understand that stuff would be really helpful. The example I'll give you is if someone shows up to buy something or someone shows up on Edmund's channel and they're watching and they start clicking on all sorts of things, to be able to back that out and be able to say, where did this person come from? What triggered them to come here? And then what triggered them to stay? So what things were they clicking on that allow me to know, oh, these are things that are interesting to them, right? So imagine a consumer business where people show up, they spend an hour on the site and they buy $100 worth of stuff. Don't you want to know who that consumer is, what they look like so that you can go find more of those consumers, right? But you can't do that if you don't understand attribution, right? Like if you don't understand where they came from or how you acquired them, how will you find more of them? Right. So I think those two for me right now are very promising. I know we get a lot of content marketers. Content marketing is going to keep changing because of AI and everything else. So that's one that I'm not so sure about at the moment because I I think companies are leaning too far into AI, so they're probably not hiring a lot of content people right now. Probably 6 months from now, they might realize like, oh, we went too far. But for the moment, I think content marketing is a hard place to get into.
Excellent. What do you do for networking, and how much time do you spend on social media like LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the only place I spend any significant amount of time. So, the businesses that I work on, they have all sorts of things: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. I don't do any of that. I do manage LinkedIn stuff. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I would say, so to clarify, like in a week, I'll probably spend 2 hours, maybe three on LinkedIn if I'm posting a ton of stuff. I do post a lot, but I also have like LinkedIn is it's a network that is for work, right? So this is not where your friends hang out. This is not where so I have a clear content plan for LinkedIn. And I think if you're a student watching this, if you know how to make a content calendar, you should make one for LinkedIn that talks about who you are and what your interests are, because that is a great way for a hiring manager to understand who you are.
I've seen it. It's impressive for some of the students.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
way more advanced than the others.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
highly recommend. That's brilliant.
yeah.
Can you describe a time when you had to think outside of the box for a marketing campaign?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, the podcast is probably the one that, because I work in an industry, packaged goods, that they don't they don't see the future well. Like some things we see, right? We see consumer trends well, but we as an industry, we're not particularly known for being futuristic or forward thinking. And so in order to get the industry dialed into what a podcast is, because for a long time nobody understood a podcast in the CPG industry, we had to go out and do some things that are different. Like, so, we did start filming video because it helped people pay attention to who we are, right? Because they understand TV much better than they understand radio. And so as soon as you started filming, people would go, "Oh, wait, what are you doing? What is this activity for?" And that kind of helped us kind of break through the industry, so they kind of understood what we do and why we're doing what we do.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Next question. How do you think AI will change the industry? And what should the career-minded do to prepare themselves for the potential challenges?
I think AI is going to kind of flip everything over. I think we're starting to come around to this. I think there are a couple of things that we have to do. One is it's not going away. So for anyone who's hiding from it or who says, we shouldn't use it, it's a mistake, right? It's not different than Excel or Canva or any of these other things. You need the tools. You must use the tools. Everybody else is using the tools. I think the second thing we have to think about is the part that we have to learn faster is how to talk to AI, because the reason that, you know, you get garbage in or garbage out is because you put garbage in, right? And that's not because you're not being thoughtful. It's just you don't know the language, right? It's no different than I don't know if you see this in your classes, but I tell my students, when you go for an interview, come talk to me first, right? And they go, why? And I say, it's not because you don't have interview skills. I'm Chinese, but I'm Canadian born, right? And so I understand language that you don't, right? And so the one that I give my students all the time, like, there are things about Canadians that you don't realize, right? Like, we're a very polite people and we don't do things directly a lot, right? So that's just not our culture, right? So we wouldn't, in the Americas, someone might say to you, don't do that, right? Because they just know, right? Or, they would say it more aggressively. In Canada, we wouldn't say that. We would say, that's not something we would normally do, right? But if you're from another culture, you might just hear, oh, it's a preference, right? But actually, when a Canadian says that, it's not a preference. It's because we don't do it, right? But we don't say we don't do it. We just say that's not what we would do, right? And so you kind of, like, if you don't know those cultural norms or how we say things, how will you know, right? So AI is similar in that format, where if you want to say, generate me a picture of two professors talking on a Zoom call, in your mind, that's the right language to use, but that's not the vocabulary that AI needs to make a good picture, right? Because the picture that'll come out of that won't be as beautiful as the one that we've got going here, right? So you've got to put in two good-looking middle-aged professors, super smart. Anyway, you get the idea. So
Absolutely. I think we'll go more than that and say two really handsome,
that's
blah,
right.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% with you. We actually use the same language when we're talking about garbage in, garbage out. And I think we have to embrace the technology and use it
Yeah.
every day
Yeah.
so that when they go to interviews, they're more prepared.
That's right.
When the
Yeah.
jobs are available, they become more prepared. At this point, I think the whole industry is still trying to figure out what they need. However, people are hiring data scientists and more technical people like that for machine learning. But that doesn't mean that our students should not really get themselves prepared for the next major hire. I think the next thing that people would do is to hire marketing analysts to tweak the engine, to do a lot of AI marketing stuff. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. So anyway, I just think it is the future. You have to embrace it. We've got to find a way to make it fit into our lives, right? Because it's going to keep growing, right? Like there's a lot of AI coming, right? And then I think, sorry, the last one I would add there, Edmund, is I think you need to understand the mechanics of AI, right? As best as we can, right? Because there's a lot of things that, are kind of very data-ish or very algorithmic-ish that we don't understand. But you need to know the basics. So you need to understand the difference between GPT-3, 3.5, and 4. You need to understand when you're using an open model versus a closed model, because those things, it makes a difference on what the output is. And so you owe it to yourself, and you actually owe it to society to know what you're automatically generating, right? Because everything you generate probably for the students who are listening, from about the time you were 12 till the time you're 100, it adds to the fabric of our world. Whereas like Edmund and I can say that things that we did as a kid, they probably went nowhere, right? Like the science projects we did, all that kind of stuff, it may or may not have gone anywhere, but likelihood it went nowhere because we didn't track that stuff. But you guys, you're part of a gen that everything you do, it goes into the World Wide Web, right? And so that means it adds to the fabric of the world, which means everything that we do now, you have to think about whether it's good or bad. So if you're using a closed model and you're not checking sources of information you're using, you're adding bad to the world that we live in, right? So that's something I think that also we haven't really got our heads around on AI, right? Is that we have a responsibility to make sure that we're kind of propagating the right information.
That was inspiring, Phil. Thank you for doing that. You and I talk about transferable skills that we can take from one job to another, from one industry to the next. Could you please elaborate on that strategy?
Oh my gosh.
We'll take a day.
Edmund, it's funny because we have great conversations, right? But I've really only known Edmund like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But when we first met, there's a lot of kismet because I think we understand each other. We approach things a lot the same way. And one of the things we talked about is like when you're older and you move from one industry to another, sometimes people are at a loss because they know skill sets only in the solidified moments, and they don't know what to do with that job, if you will, when they move somewhere else. I think what you have to think about in transferable skills is you have to know, you really have to know the job you came from and the job you're going to. So if you're from another country and you're here, you have to take apart the jobs so that they're not jobs, right? And you have to find the things that made the jobs work. A really good one actually is email marketing in a different country looks different than email marketing here, right? The format is different, everything's different, the languages are probably different, but the base skill is not different, right? Is you have analytic skills that help you understand an audience. You have good skills for understanding what call to actions look like, and then you understand how to read click rates, open rates, delivery rates, right? And then you also know what makes an audience, what attracts an audience, right? So those things are, one is a job, email marketer. The other one is a set of transferable base skills that you can bring in, so that you can talk about it differently. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see with students these days is when they have prior world skills and they come here, they're trying to make them apples to apples, which makes companies here go, hang on a second, it's not apples to apples, right? Because what you did in another country in email, I may or may not do here. So how am I supposed to validate those skills? But if you came to a company and said, I understand audiences, I understand click rates, I understand call to action, and I understand how to deliver in a way that doesn't make audiences unsubscribe, that is something a company can go, oh, hang on a second, let me test that, right? Because those are valuable to me no matter what language, what country you're in before, right? So I think that's the difference. I would say is that's how you kind of look at these, is boil them down to what is common in the two countries, not what is equivalent.
Excellent. That's brilliant. The one interesting thing is that I've always been asking my students to come up with it on their resumes, and they're struggling. And I think the thing that you just talked about is really thinking about how to articulate your differentiators.
Yeah.
How to think about your transferable skill and articulate it so that it's a selling point for you for your next job.
That's right.
When did you find out that you're so analytical?
Oh, Early, I think, like when I was at I had a lot of, so the 2 years, no, the two jobs. So Revlon and Kimberly-Clark, I spent the most time in my life in data that I've ever spent, right? And I was like, when I went to Lipton Unilever, I barely understood Excel. I knew how to add things together, like sums, right? And that's it. And then I got to Unilever and started to kind of like play with it and realize, oh, this thing's kind of cool. I can do some things with it. When I got to Revlon, they basically went, here's a ginormous pile of data, right? And I went, I don't know what, so I started reading, right? Because there was no YouTube. I sound really old now, but there was no YouTube at the time, right? So no way learning. So I bought this ginormous thick, there were all these books that you could, learn Excel or, so I had one for VBA, I had one for Excel, and I had one for Access on my desk. So these three, kind of like, they stood about this high, I think, right?
Oh,
And so, like playing with data, playing. And I got a real appreciation for it, right? Because I learned the value of charts, I learned the value of visualization, and then being able to find and spot outliers, all those sort of things. And I love that, right? So that started to morph for me, right? Because then your brain does something different, right? Because when the numbers go away, your brain doesn't stop looking for outliers or exceptions or, and that's what analytics is about, right? Is like, where do I see patterns? Where do I see outliers? Where do I see things that are anomalous that shouldn't be there? And those things fuel. I've always been a curious guy, so that always fuels. That makes you go, what? Why is that there? That doesn't make any sense. Like, let's go pick at it and see if there's something there.
I asked that question because some of my students, they do not have an idea what they want to do from a career standpoint.
Mm.
And some of the programs would end in a few months. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they're running out of time, but if I know what I want as a student, I'm also a competitor in the job market.
Yeah.
I would be in much better shape than them because
Yeah.
I would connect to LinkedIn, potential hiring managers and
Yeah.
industry that
Yeah.
is related. Then the other student would go, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. So
Yeah.
they don't have the motivation of doing that. So in my channel, there's a 6-step process for career planning.
Oh, cool.
Do you have any advice for the career minded who hasn't really decided what they want to do? I still remember when I was much younger, I thought about sales and marketing, sales and marketing. I did first marketing and then sales. So for you, do you have any recommendations for the career minded from a career planning standpoint?
I think you have to. So to me, yeah, because I have those students. I actually ask them. It's the first thing I do in every class is I kind of like go through the class and figure out who's graduating, who's not, what do they want to do next, right? And then anyone who, as you're right, anyone who kind of has an idea about where they want to go, we start talking immediately about, what LinkedIn contacts do you have? What do you need? Let's go look for people. Is there someone in my network that you need to talk to, right? So that we can start connecting you with the people that could help you, kind of get to your first step. For the ones that don't know, I guess I don't know if I have a real answer. What I do is I start to pick at things that they love and what they don't love. Because I feel like, when you're a student, you're trying to get to places, you have some latitude. So, and you've got a few weeks. So pick at some of those things, right? Like, because the analytical part of my brain goes, what is anomalous and what's not? So what stands out? So if someone says, well, I don't know, I just really love retail, then I start picking at that to see, is there something else there, right? So when you say you really love it, like, is it because you like going shopping, or do you like certain stores? Do you like, one guy said to me in one of the past years, he said, I really love video games. And I said, do you love playing video games, or like what, yeah, obviously, but I think Epic Games is really cool and they do, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you realize what you really want to do is work for Epic Games, but you think, the programming says you won't get there. So your brain is filtering that out, right? So you're trying to go do something else. Well, would you settle for something else in the video game industry, or does it have to be Epic Games right now, right? And his answer was, no, I give my left arm to be in video games, right? So then we started looking at, who do we know in video games that you can talk to, that you can connect with? What topics are they talking about? Let's make you sound like a video game guy, right? And eventually he got a job in video games. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, I think you've got to, but you have to tune to some of those things. Like if you're a student and you're like, oh, whatever, if you keep doing whatever, you're going to get whatever. So you kind of need to pick a spot and like, move, right? And then we got to move and see. And if it's wrong, you pivot, which is what everybody does in life, right? Is, oh, I hit a dead end. I need to turn around, go back and go another way, right? So, yeah.
okay, the last question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you have any other career advice you want to share?
Oh my gosh. I think the only thing that I ever tell people is to be curious and keep learning. You have to, it's a long road. And then if you look at Edmund's career and you look at my career, we've gone about it different ways, but we've also like made similar stops along the way. We've done, and if it tells you nothing is life is never the same. Like it's not the same today. It's not the same tomorrow. You learn different crap every day and you have to keep learning. Like make sure that learning is a priority in your life. You have to feed yourself, you have to pay bills, all that kind of stuff. We all do, but you have to keep learning. Otherwise you wake up one day and realize I haven't learned anything new. And chances are if you're not happy, it's because you haven't learned anything new in the last who knows how long, right? So that would be
Thanks. One thing that I notice is there's some indifference.
yeah.
Indifference being, okay, I like that. I like what professor is saying. But when I get home, I may or may not remember it. But if I even remember it, that was a fun thing that professor's talking about. It makes a lot of sense. But because I don't have a career objective, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
So that was good, but
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So the
But so
indifference
what?
is the problem.
Yeah.
And why is there indifference? To me, is you don't have a career goal yet.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. So for the career-minded listening, thank you so much, Phil, for an inspiring interview.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
It's tremendous. We've got so much information today in an hour, then I think people would learn in a lifetime. So thank you again.
That's very lofty. I think that's a lot. Hopefully somebody learns something out of this.
Well, I learned a lot,
So,
I
yeah.
really appreciate it. I think we sing from the same song sheet for a lot of the things that we talk about,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we may want to do another episode of this.
I'm down. Anytime you want to do it, I'm down. I'm down.
Thank you so much. And then
Welcome.
on behalf of all listening, thank you. And please visit Phil's YouTube channel.
This Commerce Life. Thank you. Thanks, Edmund.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me do this. This is really fun.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Thanks. Okay.